I very much welcome the fact that Ireland is attempting to re-enter the bond market today, albeit in a small way, and I wish the NTMA the very best of success. I wish the NTMA the very best of success. However, back in the real world, the world that we encounter every day, back in the real world, Minister, the problem of unemployment gets steadily worse. In October of last year, the leader of your party, Untitled Chapter, Gilmore, said, and I quote, "There has been a significant reduction in unemployment. The Jobs Initiative is working." Now, Minister, in view of the latest statistics from the CSO, which indicates that at 14.9%, unemployment has reached its highest rate in 18 years, in view of the fact that more than 1 of 2 of those people have been unemployed for a year or more, and in view of the fact that 1 in 3 of them have been unemployed for 2 years or more, in view of the fact that there are more people now, and we welcome this, on training schemes, but that masks the real rate of unemployment, in view of the fact that there are 75,000 people per annum leaving the country, that's 200 per day. We've had a jobs initiative, a jobs budget, an action plan for jobs. But in view of the statistics, do you hold to that view? Do you agree? Do you still agree with that statement by the Taoiseach that unemployment is reducing and the jobs initiative is working?
Thank you. Minister Quinn.
Thank you on behalf of the Government for the observations that you made, which we welcome. We will probably have information about the bond auction before the end of business. If I do get that information, I'll convey it to the House. The first thing I want to say about these figures is that, yes, they are disappointing. The Government regards unemployment as its #1 priority, and we believe that these figures, frankly, are far too high. What we have succeeded in doing is stabilising the live register. This is the 18th successive month of broad stability. The live register for each month has been within 3% of the figure for the same month of the previous year. It is also important to remember that there are always people coming onto and also off the live register. For example, 62,000 people left the register to take up work in the first 5 months of this year. But of course, we all want to get the numbers down, and the Government is sparing no effort to do everything it can to achieve this. When we first came into office, we successfully negotiated the Jobs Initiative. We have put in place the Jobs Strategy, and we are ensuring that it has been implemented across all Government departments and agencies. We're delighted, we designed the budget to be jobs-friendly, and we included a number of employment-promoting measures within it. We have published Pathways to Work, which is a major reform of the education, training and social welfare system, to ensure that people are assisted to find employment. And we are working to bring forward an investment programme to stimulate activity in the domestic economy. But I would say, Deputy O'D, in addition to those observations, and I can make more, we export 80% of what we produce. All the schemes in the world, while they will assist people to upskill, will not, in fact, provide them with jobs unless the economy grows. We're the most export-dependent economy within the European Union. We export 80% of what we produce, and because of the continuing uncertainty within the euro, although last week's announcements have stabilised the markets considerably, we will depend to a certain extent on factors over which we've no control. That's the buoyancy in the European market, and by extension, because of the downturn in the European market, there's been a downturn, as we all know, in China and in the United States and elsewhere. We will continue to improve the qualifications of people within the labour market, but economic growth is what we depend upon, and hopefully the European Central Bank later today will, as broadly anticipated, announce a reduction in interest rates, which will be a further stimulus to broad economic growth.
Thank you. Deputy O'D.
I hear what the Minister is saying, but I have to say that when the Minister and his colleagues were on this side of the House, they gave very short shrift to that type of defence for the then unemployment situation. The Taoiseach, Eamon Gilmore, on the 30th of June 2010, he said that the biggest crisis facing this country at present was the level of unemployment, which then was less than now. He went on to berate the Government and said that they shouldn't spend another week in office because of the level of unemployment. So what has changed? All that has changed, John Corlett, the Labour Party. The Labour Party is soul searching again. the Labour Party are soul stretching again. If you look long enough, you might find one.
Sorry, would you please?
Is the Taoiseach aware?
Don't be trying to shout down the speaker. Thank you. Thank you.
Dealing with the legacy of your programme for government.
Sorry, would you please?
Tell us about yours.
When this government left office in February of 2011, there was 350,000 people more at work than when they took office. I doubt if this government will be ever able to make that boast. Now, is the Taoiseach aware of the statements this morning right across the social spectrum? Is he aware of the statement from the ISME that the government's jobs policy is a shambles? ICTU is calling on the government to start tackling the jobs problem. And the Chambers of Commerce have issued a statement saying that the unemployment levels here are at crisis point. That's the reality. So what I'm asking the Taoiseach, what I asked the Minister initially was, does he agree that the problem is being effectively tackled? Does he agree that the problem is being effectively tackled?
Thank you.
I do agree that it has been effectively tackled, but sadly, none of us anticipated the scale of the problem that you guys left behind.
Would you please allow the Speaker the right to speak? Thank you. On both sides. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Count Corley. There has been a big and remains to be a big problem of consumer debt in this economy. Personal debt, mortgage debt and the rest of it. And it has taken us longer than we would have liked to get to the insolvency legislation that my colleague here beside me has launched in the House. And in fact, the amount of time that will be required for the opening speeches is an indication of how complex that is. And we hope that it will work. Secondly, we are quite clear that the change in property prices in some parts of the Irish market, as indicated recently, will give us some degree of buoyancy, and that NAMA will be, in fact, making some proposals in relation to the construction sector. But, Deputy O'D, if you were to ask me, honestly, as distinct from provocatively, are we satisfied with the progress? The answer has to be no, I'm not. For so long as people are without a job, I'm not satisfied with that progress. And all I can say to you is this, that the track record of this administration here, the last time we were in government, which was far too long ago, is an evidence of the fact that we can do the job, unlike yourselves.
Thank you. I now call on Deputy MacDonald, please. Thank you. Deputy MacDonald.
Thank you. Thank you, Count Corley. Minister, yesterday Sinn Féin met again with the Troika. They met with the parties this time round. Who's to say, Deputy? And we outlined to them our view that your policies of austerity are not working. Not alone are they hurting citizens, but they are obviously damaging the domestic economy, and they're keeping hundreds of thousands of people on the dole. And they're killing off any prospects for the economic growth which you say you wish to see. What was very clear from our engagement is that on issues such as tax reform, public spending, social welfare payments, the government, your government, has significant scope and choices on what policies it will pursue. So, Minister, I want you today to tell us what issues are on the table and what choices you propose to make. Will cuts to basic rates of social welfare be on the table? Are you going to make cuts to payments to the most vulnerable families? Will you consider cuts to the extravagant salaries paid to your own special advisers? I've pursued this issue on many occasions with your colleague Minister Howland to no avail. Indeed, the salary cap for special advisers is more honoured in the breach than the observance. So I want to know, are you going to finally show leadership on this issue? The Taoiseach's two special advisers are paid sums of €168,000 and €155,000 respectively. The advisers to Minister Joan Burton, Minister for Social Protection, and indeed Minister Howland also breached that cap. So I want to know, will you deal with that matter? Are tax increases for those over €100,000 on the table? Or do you intend, Minister, yet again, to protect the high rollers and to levy all of the pain on those families who are on low and middle incomes?
Thank you. Minister.
I'm glad that the Sinn Féin party met with the Troika. I hope that you continue to meet with such people like that. It might detach you from your voodoo economics that you currently spout in here. The reality is that no family, no small business and no country can run a permanent budget deficit. The cycle has to be balanced over the period of time. And unfortunately, because the tax base of this country was destroyed when the boom economy, when the boom economy bust, revenues plummeted. Now, as you know, Deputy, the gap between revenue and expenditure is still there, but it is narrowing. But we will still have to reduce expenditure next year, no matter which way we do it. And the which way has not yet been engaged upon, so I can't answer hypothetical questions. Other than this country and this administration will in fact try and do two things at the same time. Move towards getting a budget deficit of 3% so that we have a platform to get a budget surplus. The last surplus, incidentally, was brought in 1997 by this administration. A planned surplus, which has never happened before. A planned surplus, never happened before. And we will do it again if we get the opportunity. In the meantime, we will look at all of the issues that have to be on the table and that are on the table. But this is the second week in the month of July, and the budget will be delivered in December. And can I say as a final point, all of the special advisor salaries are a fraction of what they were in terms of amount and in terms of numbers compared to what the previous administration had.
Thank you. Deputy MacDonald.
Well, in fact, our meeting with the Troika was our third one, just to reassure the Minister, and your own voodoo, brand of voodoo economics are fairly catastrophic for families the length and breadth of the state. We're coming towards the end of this Dáil session, and you say that the budget won't be read until December. That's fair enough, but the deliberations and the decisions around that budget are well in train, and much of the thinking and planning will be done over the summer months. And you, Minister, are out of touch with reality when you sing your own praises, because, of course, the ESRI have told us from their studies that Budget 2012 involved greater proportionate losses for those on low incomes than any of the previous austerity budgets. Are you aware of that? You've already spoken today about unemployment, which is now at nearly 15%. Citizens are losing their homes because of the mean-spirited changes that you've introduced to rent supplement, and there'll be a demonstration outside here today. The cap for advisors' pay was introduced by you. Will you finally honour it?
Thank you.
And will you tell this Dáil here today that whatever choices are on the table, that you will protect, that you will resolve to protect basic rates of social welfare?
Thank you. Minister.
First of all, I will take no lecture from a party in this House whose military wing visited 2.5 decades of austerity on this island. 2.5 austerities. 2.5 decades of austerity. Yes, I do. The House may be interested to know that the NTMA sold bonds this morning at a 1.8% yield. That's less than the estimated 2% that was, in fact, the note I have is that they sold the bonds three months, and that it came in at, and you can't even accept good news, God love you. You can't even accept good news. You're really pathetic. You just can't accept good news.
Deputy Boyd Barrett. Deputy Boyd Barrett. I didn't know there were so many Boyd Barretts over that side of the House. I call this one. I'm calling this one. Thank you. Deputy Boyd Barrett. Thank you.
Thanks, Count Corley.
Thank you. Can we have some order for Deputy Boyd Barrett? Thank you.
Minister, I'm sure you're familiar with the great Irish playwright Sean O'Casey's depiction of how working class people at the beginning of this century were forced to...
Please. Would you please allow the deputy to speak? Thank you. Look, I won't ask you a second time. I'm getting sick and tired of it. He's entitled to say what he has to say, and the Minister will reply on behalf of the government side of the House. In the meantime, everybody respect the Speaker. Thank you. And I'm not going to ask again. The next time, you'll be out the door. And I'm warning you. Thank you.
Thank you, Count Corley. Minister, as I was saying, I'm sure you're familiar with the plays of Sean O'Casey, where he depicted the squalid tenement and poverty-ridden conditions of working-class people at the beginning of this century. Can I put it to you that the government's cuts in rent allowance and new housing policy are threatening a return to those slum landlord and tenement conditions that we thought we had left behind us? Again this week in the gallery, I have about 30 families who are threatened with homelessness or have been made homeless as a result of the cuts in the rent allowance caps. This would not be a problem if the government was providing council housing for the 96,000 people who are on the council housing list. But in fact, your government in June of last year, without making any public announcement about it, made a decision to abandon the direct provision of council housing, so that there will be no council housing directly provided by local authorities in the future. A veritable counter-revolution in social housing policy.
Question, please.
So, Minister, can I ask you, will you admit, first of all, that your government has abandoned the direct provision of council housing? Will you accept that this decision and the cuts in the rent allowance caps is a policy that is disastrously failing the 96,000 people on the housing list and represents a massive waste of taxpayers' money? Will you abandon this policy and revert to the direct provision of council housing and tell the people in the gallery and the 96,000 other people on the housing list when they will get a secure council house of their own?
Thank you. Minister.
I accept what Deputy Boyd Barrett has said in relation to the crisis in housing. It is one of the most extraordinary contradictions of our times that on the one hand we have people who can't afford to buy a house, who are on rent supplement in privately owned houses, and at the same time we have acres of ghost estates. When the history of this period is written from a distance of objectivity, they're going to say, how was it that a whole community got it so wrong? I would love to see those houses that are in NAMA converted into social housing if that is possible. But I would have to say to you honestly, Deputy, it doesn't seem to me to make sense to be building new houses at a time when we have an overrun of existing houses, irrespective of the ownership of those houses. The first step, it seems to me, would be to look at how you can rationalise this oversupply and use the empty houses or the houses that are privately owned or indeed that are owned by NAMA and convert them into long-term sustainable social housing so that you don't have the distortions that are there. But I will raise the points that you've raised with me with my colleague Deputy Jan O'Sullivan.
Thank you. Deputy Barrett.
Minister, I appreciate your answer, but can I just put the following points to you? In a parliamentary question to the Minister, I asked this week and got an answer how many social houses would be provided in the next year. He said about 4,500. But they're not council houses. They're what are now called social housing. In other words, either voluntary housing or RAS schemes, private landlord schemes, all of which represent money going out from public coffers to non-public bodies, which seems to me a waste of money. Now, whether we acquire the NAMA houses or directly provide them by building the houses, the only thing that makes sense is for the state itself to provide council houses so that we save the €500 million a year in rent allowance payments and get an extra probably €250 million in extra tax revenue. Even the Troika could see the sense of that. So why is it that the government has said we're not providing council housing anymore and is outsourcing it to NAMA, to RAS schemes or to voluntary housing bodies, some of which, I have to say, the conditions I've seen in the last week are deplorable. Not all of them, but many of these voluntary housing organisations are effectively big business, and they are putting people into squalid conditions.
Thank you.
It should be the state. And can I ask you, will you tell the people on the list when are they going to get housed? Will they have to wait 10 or 11 years, as the current situation, to get a secure council house?
Thank you. Minister.
Deputy, through the chair, it wouldn't make economic sense, or indeed social sense, to divert scarce capital resources into a new local authority housing building programme. And I'll tell you why. We have a surplus of houses there, irrespective of the ownership. We should be looking at getting effective, efficient use of what's there already. In many respects, that's a matter that has to be dealt with, and Jan O'Sullivan will be able to do so in due course. But can I tell you that in the next 6 years, 70,000 young people, most of whom are alive today, will come into the education system, and we have to prioritise capital. We have to provide capital to build the extra capacity in the entire area of the country where those population increases are considered. So we have limited capital resources. We have a surplus of empty houses there. Sort out the ownership by all means, but in the meantime use the scarce capital resources that we have to meet a rising demand that nobody denies. 70,000 additional pupils, 45,000 extra young kids in the primary school system that currently has 500,000, and 25,000 coming into the post-primary. That's where capital should go, and that's where we'd get the economic return in terms of taxes.
Thank you.